This is another one of Fitness Blender's beginner cardio and toning workouts. In this workout, we're going to be doing 9 different exercises for 50 seconds each. We're going to have a really quick transition, basically giving you just enough rest to move from one exercise to the next. We're only going to be going through one round of this, and you're not going to need any equipment except for an optional exercise mat and perhaps an open wall. Now let's go ahead and get ready for our first exercise, the slow high knee pulls. It's just nice and slow, lifting those knees up as high as is comfortable, pulling those arms down to those knees as those knees come up. And then as those knees go back down, you extend your arms back over your head. Just keep that motion going, pushing as full a range of motion as is comfortable for you, keeping it at a nice, even pace. Just make sure you keep your lungs open and you're keeping all those other muscles nice and tense to get a little extra calorie burn, a little bit of extra toning. Now, all these exercises of this routine are meant for beginners, but we know that everybody is going to be at a different strength level, so if this is too easy for you, you can always make it harder. If it's too hard for you, you can always make it easier. Just modify how you need to make it most comfortable for you. We have just about 10 seconds left. Keep that motion going just a little bit longer. And 5 seconds left. We're going to be switching to a wall push-up next. So if you have an open piece of wall next to you, go ahead and move yourself in front of that. Hands just about shoulder width apart, maybe a little bit wider. And start it up. Now you want those feet to be about 2 to 3 feet away from the base of the wall. The further those feet are away from the wall, the harder the push-up's going to be. So just pick the difficulty level that is right for you. Now if you find this really easy, you can always drop down onto the ground and do a full push-up off those toes or a half push off of those knees. But if that's a little too difficult for you, then Kelly's going to switch here in just a second to a plyometric style push-up, which is actually getting a little bit of space underneath those hands. So just push off and try to get a little acceleration so those hands come up off that wall, and then nice and slow control your deceleration as you drop back down towards that wall and then pop it up again. So just keep that motion going, whichever version is most comfortable for you. We got about 10 seconds left till we switch to our next exercise. 5 seconds left. We're going to switch to a ski squat plus a curl. Now we're going to be using just body weight for this one, working against ourselves. If you want to use dumbbells for the curl portion, feel free to grab a pair. And let's go ahead and start it up. Nice tight squeeze, pulling that fist up towards that shoulder, getting a tight squeeze on that bicep, working against it with that tricep, the back of that arm. So you want to be contracting both at the same time, pushing and pulling with those muscles. Nice, slow, controlled motion, squatting down as low as is comfortable. Try to keep your weight evenly dispersed between your toe and your heel. Try not to let those knees lean too far forward. You want to try to keep your weight back in that heel more than anything. Just keep that motion going a little bit longer. And like I said before, if this is too easy for you, if you want to make it a little bit more difficult, you can always grab a pair of dumbbells and do those curls with weight. It'll actually make those squats a little bit more difficult as well. And just 5 seconds left. Keep that motion going just a little bit longer. And let it relax. All right, let's go move on to our next exercise, which is a toe touch crunch. So grab that mat if you have one handy. Otherwise, if you have somewhere else soft to lay, like the carpet or something like that, that's perfectly fine as well. Laying flat on your back, those legs straight up over top of those hips. Try to keep your legs as straight as is comfortable. Start it up, crunching up towards those toes. Get a nice tight squeeze at the top of that range of motion. Now, if your hamstrings are really tight, it's going to be difficult for you to keep your knees completely straight, which is perfectly fine. You can leave those knees slightly bent or completely bent at a 90-degree angle if you'd rather. Kelly's going to go ahead and demonstrate that version, so just bend those knees down, reaching down through those thighs rather than up towards those toes. It's the same exact motion. Those abs contract exactly the same. The only difference is those hamstrings just aren't engaged quite as much. You don't have to use those quadriceps, the front of that thigh, anywhere near as much. Just keep that motion going, get a nice tight crunch at the top, keep those lungs open, make sure you're not holding your breath at any time during this exercise. We've just got a few seconds left to go, so keep pushing through it. 5 seconds left, keep going. And let it relax. All right, go and stand up for the next exercise. It's going to be a lateral step plus a toe touch. And let's go ahead and start it up. Nice wide step left to right. Lunging down, trying to touch that toe. Only lunge as far as is comfortable. If you can't get as low as Kelly, that's perfectly fine. Just do whatever you can control. Making sure that you're reaching down towards that right foot with that left hand and down towards that left foot with that right hand. So crossing over top of that body. Just keep stepping it back and forth. You want that step to be at least a couple of feet wide, preferably more like 3 or 4. You're just trying to get as much distance as you can while still keeping it relatively low impact. Now that upper body's not really doing a whole lot for this exercise, so to burn a few extra calories and to make sure you get a little more tone out of it for your upper body, make sure you're keeping all those muscles through your upper body nice and tense. So that chest, that upper back, those biceps and triceps, and especially all those core muscles, those abs, obliques, and lower back. You have just a few seconds left. And let it relax. Nicely done. Let's go and move to the next, which is going to be 5 torso twists and a punch on the 5th one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, punch. 1, 2, 3, 4, punch. Just keep that rotation going, so that way you're going to alternate which hand you punch with every single time. Only go as fast as you can control, as fast as is comfortable for you. So start with a nice slow rotation. You don't have to keep up with Kelly. Get just as much of a rotation as comfortable. Then a nice full extension of that arm. Keeping a quarter squat or more. If you want it to be harder, squat down even lower. If you want it to be harder for that torso, move a little bit faster, keeping everything really nice and tensed. Just make sure you're not jerking back and forth. You want to keep everything nice and smooth. Five seconds left until we switch to our forward bends plus an overhead raise. And go ahead and let those torso twists relax. Moving on to the next one, starting bending straight down towards those toes. As you come back up, those hands are going to go over top of your head, right back down to those toes. So you're trying to get a full range of motion out of that shoulder as well as through those hips. You want to keep that back relatively flat. Don't let that lower back round. You're trying to hinge only from that hip joint. So keep that chest kind of tilted forward a little bit so you contract that lower back. Then a nice full sweeping motion with those arms. Again, only go down as far as is comfortable. If you don't have the flexibility to touch those toes, that's perfectly fine. You can get a little bit of a squat out of it by bending those knees to try to get a little bit lower, or you can keep those knees locked out and just go as low as is comfortable on those hamstrings. Whichever one you do, just make sure it's nice and slow, under control, and you're making sure you're keeping those lungs open, you're not holding your breath. We're almost done, just 5 seconds left. And let it relax. Go ahead and move down to the ground for the next one. We're doing bird dogs next, so on those hands and knees. And let's start them up by bringing that right hand and left leg up. Get them nice and straight across that body, and then switch over to the other side, just alternating back and forth, holding for a couple of seconds. Making sure you're keeping those lungs open, those core muscles nice and contracted. You want your arm nice and contracted, that leg nice and contracted. Making sure everything through that body is nice and solid. You never want to let any of those muscles release. You want to make sure that you're keeping your back flat. You don't want to let that lower back dip down, so don't overextend that leg up back behind you. You don't want to lift that foot more than about 6 inches above the height of your hip. Otherwise, you're going to start rotating your hips and dipping your lower back. And you want to try to keep that lower back flat. So you got just about 10 seconds left. Just keep alternating back and forth. 2-second hold on each side. And go ahead and let that relax. We're going to stand up for our next exercise, which is going to be a Captain Morgan. This is just a static hold. Bring that left leg up, standing on that right leg. Those arms are going to be straight out to your sides for the easiest version. This is just to challenge your balance. The next hardest is what Kelly's doing now with those hands in front of the chest. Then the hardest version is those arms straight up over your head. Just make sure you're holding your balance. Those core muscles are nice and tight, keeping that knee up about hip height on that left leg. And we're doing half and half, so I'll switch here in just a second. And go ahead and switch those legs, bring that right knee up. Again, knee about hip height. Start with those arms straight out to your sides. Next hardest is hands right in front of your chest. And the next hardest is those hands directly above your head. Just hold it at whichever version is most comfortable for you. And don't worry if you can't keep your balance, just keep doing this exercise, you'll get better at it. We're almost done, just a few seconds left. And let it relax. Nicely done. Okay, this workout is complete. You just finished Fitness Blender's low impact cardio and toning workout for beginners.